My guest in the Nimataion today is Ness Bosch, and together we are spinning a yarn. Ness, you're an author, shamaness, priestess. You're very active in the pagan community in Scotland, where you live. You're a speaker at conferences. The Path of the Bones is your work. It's linked in the show notes, of course. So great to have you here.
Thank you for having me today.
And let's just jump right into it. Ness, what has been your favorite childhood story?
Well, my dad was very much into Greek mythology,
Hmm.
and he used to tell us so sort of stories from Greek mythology, but the one that kind of sticks to me is the one about how Perseus killed Medusa.
Mm.
Um, but it was, he used to just tell us many different stories about from the Greek myths, no?
Mhm.
But that kind of, I felt, um, I always had this connection with Medusa because of that.
So you were rooting for Medusa?
Yes.
I mean, because of what her backstory? Because she didn't do anything wrong, did she?
No, she didn't.
Mm.
No, I felt sorry for Medusa as a
Mhm.
child, and then obviously, uh, growing up. Digging into the shadow of the story of Medusa and the abuse and everything. Obviously, I vouch for Medusa. I hold a sanctuary to Hecate,
Mm.
and um it's also named after Medusa
Mhm.
because she's so important to me. So
Yeah, yeah. So, did you express these feelings as a child as well? Did you quarrel with your dad and say, "No, Perseus is the bad guy," or did you play the myth and change it, or how did it work?
no, the myths the myths were very important. I remember my brother. He wanted to be like Perseus, and just wait. But I did feel for Medusa. I didn't think it was so right, even if I didn't know the whole story back then.
Ah, okay.
Um, but I Perseus was not my favorite in the story.
And neither Andromeda. Or so, um, so, did you have any encounters with Medusa? Did you dream of her? Did you draw her? Did you write about her?
Um,
Yeah.
growing up, these stories played a huge part of who I am now.
Mhm.
Because of this connection I had with these ancient deities through the stories my dad used to tell me, I kind of naturally became a pagan at a very early age.
Mhm.
And also because for me, it was very easy to connect with the energy of the deities, even as a child.
Mhm.
So it's not that I became a pagan as an adult. I kind of grew up surrounded by, these deities, because of their stories. And for me, it was easy to connect with them. And, and obviously, yeah, my dad's favorite was Greek mythology, but he also used to tell his the folklore, different places, because he lived in different places as well as a child. So for me, it was easy to kind of connect
Mhm.
that way. And I grew up very much kind of being a child pagan
Yeah, yeah.
in that
Okay.
sense.
Where do you? Were you the only one, or did you have friends that you kind of recruited?
No. Growing up in Spain, I was very much at the time the only pagan
Mhm.
among my friends.
Okay. So
Yeah, Spain is still very Catholic.
yeah, like Austria here. And but I guess that made you very strong in a way of defending your ideas against this whole other perspectives.
Well, as I said, mm, I my dad was all about ancient history and folklore and ancient gods and demonology and things like that. He was into the occult. He was an occultist
Hmm.
himself. But my mom on the opposite side, she was a very Catholic, very everything was evil. So I actually um I actually had to face conflict within my own home because my mom was very Catholic and I was a young pagan and a young witch, you know, using my tarot, my runes, doing the spells, and you know, she sent me to church to confess I was a witch when I was a very young teenager, you know.
Oh, very naughty.
You know, she actually she sent me to the priest to say, you need to tell the priest you're a witch.
Mm,
And and was judged for being a witch as a very young teenager.
mhm.
And then the priest came to my house and he did a blessing. He just kind of threw holy water at me as evil child, you know, things like, you know, very similar to, you know, it was just not nice.
No. I mean, we laugh about it now, but I can imagine, and I can imagine that it just made you angry and to tell them now I'm being more pagan. And of course,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously they threw I remember my mother and another relative, they took all my witchy stuff, my tarot decks and my runes, and they put them in the bin,
Mm.
you know? And but that didn't stop me from being who I am. So
And that's good. So growing up, moving out, did you take the myths with you, I suppose? Was
yes.
Medusa an integral part of that? Or did you
Um,
encounter Hecate or what? How
you
did
know,
you?
I so for me is because I'm kind of what some people call dream walker.
Mm,
So I'm very much I growing up very much having an animistic practice, you know, connecting to nature because I was very connected to nature and to the forces and spirits that were around me. But obviously through history and mythology, and I was a very avid reader. I continued to learn about different deities, different pantheons, you know, from age. I remember the first the first time I connected with Isis as a goddess, I was before I was, I don't know, before I was even 8.
mm.
And I remember she came to, you know, she came to me and in a vision and I drew her with her wings
Oh,
open. And I remember I was just a child and I remember my mom just took the drawing and took it away.
mm.
But I grew up very much connecting to the deities through their stories and for me it was easy as a dream walker to kind of connect with their energies and to be honest they kept coming,
Yeah.
you know, they kept coming to me. And when you're a dream walker and you open to you can listen or see the deities, you know. um it was just there.
Mm. So is it wrong to say that the deities have chosen you as a vessel or as their herald in our world?
Um, no, I don't really like that expression of being the chosen one or whatever, but I definitely believe that if you have these abilities, it is easier for the spirits to reach you
Mm.
and deities. And obviously, if you are in the same frequency and you can list connect to them, they're gonna come to you.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's why when I guide people in shamanic ways or in the path of the priesthood, I try to help them to connect to the deities, so they can, connect and learn and grow.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned that you have a sanctuary for Hecate and also Medusa. Is that i- i- are they your two main deities you work with?
Hecate was for a long time one of my main goddesses, and being a sea priestess, a water priestess, um, and very connected to Medusa, and she has been with me like all along
Mm.
since my childhood. Hecate came later,
Hmm.
um, but as a priestess, um, I serve the deities that come to me.
Okay.
So when you put yourself at service, you're not gonna close the door to the deity in their noses.
Yeah.
Because if they come to share something, is as a human, it's not nice to say no, thank you.
No, of course not.
So I work with the deities, with the divine that is around me. I live I live in Scotland, and I visit different deities in the places where they emanated, the local deities. Also, when I go to different countries or places, I try to honor the deities of the land
Mm.
and the spirits of the land. For me, is very important. So I am at service, you know.
Yeah.
If they come for me, I'm here. If they talk to me, I listen. And I just, I'm at the service.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. And all of that started with the stories your father told
Yes.
you, and now you're telling their stories as well. So
Yeah.
that's one way the deities interact with us through stories.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And
And
they
the
always
nice
have.
thing is also going beyond the stories in your personal work with the deity, because sometimes obviously stories have come through us through different authors, and those authors have their own feelings about
Mm.
deities or their own personal beliefs and filters, and sometimes it is good we go beyond the stories to actually meet the deity beyond these worlds, and beyond that description. Or so that's why I I try to teach my students to go beyond what they can find and actually connect personally with the deities,
Mm.
to go beyond those stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have just a hint of what that could look like? How do you meet your deity?
Where I use my shamanic work. And obviously as a dream walker, I don't really need to do journeys, because I just encounter them as they come, or I have this vision, or I go to sleep and I see them in my sleep, or also sometimes also when I'm awake. They just come and they're there. But obviously, you can you can guide people to using shamanic ways. That's what I do to actually encounter the deities. And not only that, we also do like a special journeys where the deities show us places that are important to them that maybe they're not in the books.
Yeah.
And and sometimes we see the deity depending of the deity. Some maybe you find the deity as a person because we are mirrors of the divine
Mm.
as well. And sometimes we see the deity as a person. Sometimes we see the deity bigger and we only see part of a leg or a hand that comes down. It depends of who you go to meet. There is a place in the realms where I take my students to meet with the deities in the upper realms, and so it's many different ways.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. I like this embodied version of being led to places in the land where you can interact with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for example, everyone talks, there's this controversy about Hecate, and about Hecate being a triple goddess and things like that. And honestly, some people see Hecate as this maiden mother crown thing, and it's just pure nonsense.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
pure nonsense. Like when I see Hecate, to me, Hecate is no older than 50. She's not,
Yes.
she is not a mother anymore. She's not in her 30s. She's more in between her 40s, closer to her 50s. But she's definitely not an old lady. She's not a maiden either.
No. No.
So I
It's
do have my own perception of deities.
and that's great. It's very similar to how I encountered her once, and yeah, but that's another story. Um,
Yeah.
yes, thank you so much for introducing us to
Thank you.
your story and to your way of and how these stories prepared you in a way to interact with deities and present them to your students and to us today.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Thank you so
think
much.
why I always encourage my students to do research and to read the stories because if you don't have a base, the stories are a base to start with. And we find a lot of information in the stories. And then once you got the base, go beyond those stories. So
Yes.
for giving me the opportunity to share.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed our talk very much and have a great time. See you soon.
Thank you.
The
Thank
world is
you.
magic.
Cheers.